It began with siberXchange 1.0, about 2 days, 4 sessions every hour, and that began exactly 1 year ago. It then went to 2.0, spread across 5 days, began with 2 days, grew into 5 days, and today, in its 3.0 edition, it continues and addresses challenges. Welcome to siberXchange 3.0, the Challenge Statement Edition, a concept and a conference that began at the very beginning of the pandemic, continued, and now grows. And welcome to day 1 and the opening kickoff. My name is Abbas Hirji. The date today is July 12th. July 12th also marks for me 13 years in Canada. 13 years of studying, working, growing in this beautiful country. And I thank not only all of the sponsors, the attendees, the panelists, the speakers, and the organizers for making today happen. But it would be amiss if I began this day by not reflecting on how important it is to reflect on the land that we're on. We have audiences joining us from across Canada and across North America. And people have joined in not just from Ontario, but from various other provinces. But it is extremely important that at this given moment, we not only recognize that all of you are joining us from a variety of Indigenous lands, but that we also recognize that this online conference being delivered to you virtually also runs in Indigenous space. After all, our fiber optic cables, our 5G networks, all run across this land and this air. In light of the recent findings of the mass graves across Canada, and in light of recognizing that we all work, thrive, and belong on Indigenous lands, I'm going to ask our audience that before we begin, we take a moment of silence to reflect on the mistakes of the past and bring out a promise for all things new. Let's take a moment of silence for reflection. I thank you all for giving us that moment and taking that time. My name is Abbas Hirji, and as many of you know, I am a co-chair of the siberXchange Conference 3.0, the Challenge Statement Edition, but I also lead and run the AI Hub and the Center for Cybersecurity Innovation at Durham College. You know, when I think about a challenge, many people often talk to me about challenges as obstacles in your path. I actually look at challenges and obstacles as your path. As we find ourselves mediating our ways into a new normal, into a reopening, a variety of challenges are going to come our way. And it's important that we rise to the challenge and address these challenges in the security and privacy landscape head on. So with that, please join me in welcoming our esteemed chairs who have put this conference together for you and are helping us all rise to the challenge. Chair Daniel Pinsky, Co-Chair Helen Oakley, Co-Chair Nemani. Welcome and thank you for everything that you've done to make this day happen. Welcome to the opening talk. So before we begin, I think none of you are in need of any introduction, but I'm going to ask you to perhaps introduce yourself with one fun fact about the cybersecurity space. Let me go first, since I have the role of moderator and I get to chair the script in this case, and a little bit of power gets wrestled away from Daniel to me. I'll give you one interesting fact that I actually learned in a Power Hour session. By the way, the month of July marks 1 year of the Power Hour series as well. So today is definitely a day of celebration and lots of reflection. One interesting stat, the dark web is considered to be the 3rd largest economy in the world. And as my co-chair Karen Nemani guided me on Friday and reminded me, it's estimated to be worth at least $6 trillion US. Daniel, or as I like to call you, Captain, my Captain, Chair Pinsky, the floor is yours to introduce yourself and give us one fun fact about the cybersecurity space. Daniel?
Thank you, Ali. So my name is Daniel Pinsky. I work for CDW Canada. And while I don't have an interesting fact about cybersecurity per se, I do have an interesting fact to the world of cyber. In my spare time, I enjoy rock climbing, bouldering. And when I look at a bouldering problem, I liken that to how I solve problems at work. Obviously, I have a goal. I have an objective. I want to get to the top. And obviously, in my professional life, I want to solve information security issue and help my organization stay secure. Well, like most things, there are going to be challenges or obstacles or problems in our way. If we have a methodical approach to navigate those challenges, those obstacles, and those problems, and we do so in a way that is effective and efficient, eventually I'll get to the top of my problem, and obviously I'll solve the information security problem for my organization and help them stay secure. Ali?
Pinsky, as I like to call you, but I really enjoyed the two notes that you brought there. One on method, and there's always a method to the madness, and then this approach of getting to the top. And as you always like to say, the sky is just the start and not a limit. So I'm really interested in seeing how people take that advice as they structure their way through this conference. Next, I'm going to go over to someone who is again no stranger to the siberXchange community. She runs her own show also called Hack with Helen. 2 episodes already complete, and I do invite all of you on a monthly basis to check out those shows. Helen has a lot to offer, not just to seasoned experts, but to students and people looking to get into this field. Helen, my co-chair, thank you for everything that you do and everything that you've done for not just myself, but the wider cybersecurity community. Helen, let's turn it over to you. Introduce yourself and give us one interesting fact on the world of cybersecurity.
Thank you, Ali. And hello, everybody. So my name is Helen Oakley, like Ali said, and I'm product security architect at SAP, a co-founder of Leading Cyber Ladies, which is a global network of women in cybersecurity. And I'm teacher at Hack Student. So some of you might already know, I'm very curious about hacking, and I keep learning new techniques because we need to be able to understand how offense works in order to understand the defense, how we implement our security controls. So here is a fun fact for you. Based on 2020 data breach investigations report by Verizon, 45 of breaches featured some sort of hacking. 17% involved malware and 22 involved phishing. The rest, of course, are accidental exposure, data exposure, insider threats, and other. So you see, understanding how the attack kill chain is executed and how our systems can be manipulated is crucial in building more secure systems. Ali, back to you.
As always, Helen, all of your responses take a tone of surgical precision. And I really love that about you because not only do you provide context, you provide numbers. And as they say across the world, numbers don't lie. Well, depends who's presenting it, but in Helen's case, they're very, very strong. So Helen, thank you so much again. And once again, I really appreciate everything that you've done in putting together this conference alongside our chairs. And then I'll go to another dear friend of mine with whom I believe I'm now doing my 3rd ever online session with, Karen Nemani. Karen, first of all, once again, thank you for everything that you do. I think in all of my engagements with you, one of the most powerful lines that you provided at Canadian Women in Cybersecurity has stayed very true with my heart, and that was, we don't need to call people out, we need to call them in. So let's call them into your trust and your brain trust towards cybersecurity. Karen, please introduce yourself and provide one fascinating stat about the world of cybersecurity.
Absolutely. And let me first start by saying it's been a fantastic pleasure working with 3 of you and learning and working on this conference. It's been a really great adventure as we look for solutions to some of our industry's biggest problems. I've been working in cybersecurity for over 25 years, both in the public and the private sector, consulting as well as full-time. And I have seen us go from mainframe to cloud security solutions, and along the way seen both really simple solutions and really complex solutions. One of my favorite experiences, which I'm going to share as my fun fact, was probably about 20 years ago working to build an identity management system. And to do that, you need to build root keys. And this is where for me, some of the most fun times I've had in cybersecurity are when I get to really build that high assurance, high security piece. And so I got to be part of a team that built a root key ceremony that had us creating the keys in hardware in the middle of a mountain in Geneva, Switzerland, in Switzerland, not Geneva, and with cameras, man traps, security, walking us to banks. It was probably the most fun thing we've did, and that certificate sits in your browser as a trusted route today that signs numerous sites and digital certificates and identities for people. That's a pretty cool experience and things that we get to do in cybersecurity when we are solving problems.
Oh, Karen, absolutely. I think that was more than just an interesting cybersecurity stat, but also related back to your experience. And at this point of time, I would take Switzerland any day of the week to head out to, and hopefully we're entering into better times for travel. Karen, thank you so much for that introduction. And again, to our co-chairs and chair, Daniel Pinsky, thank you so much for making sure that this day happens and the next 5 days are put together solid and pristine. We have another 25 minutes to kick this conference off. And we know that this year we're going with the theme, the Challenge Statement Edition. I'm going to ask our Chair Pinsky, to provide some perspective on what do we mean by the Challenge Statement Edition and what makes this conference particularly unique. Daniel, over to you.
Well, I think what makes this conference unique, to be completely honest, and I think what separates it from a lot of the other conferences that perhaps a lot of the folks have attended, is a typical conference would tend to focus on vendors and their solutions. But I think what's missing is the challenges that those solutions help overcome. Well, in this conference, we've actually went across industries and sectors directly to the people. And we've asked them, what are those challenges that you are facing right now? And that is at the heart of this conference. While it's true that we have then engaged service providers and vendors, the focus isn't on the service providers and vendors. It's on the challenges and the solutions. So we're solving real challenges, real problems in real time.
I want to work on that just a little bit and say to our audience is that when you're asked to engage through the live chat, my recommendation is don't just look for answers, ask questions, because that's exactly what cybersecurity is all about. Not just finding the answers, but the questions. And Chair Daniel, thank you for bringing all of those important points up. I'll take 30 seconds very quickly to also do a little bit of housekeeping for our audience. You'll be able to engage with all of the panel presenters through the live chat. You can also use the hashtag Rise to the Challenge on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram if you have any questions, and the team at siberX is monitoring. You can also go to certain groups led by some of the companies that are sponsoring the conference, and you can also instant message within the platform itself. Please feel free to drop your questions in the live chat, but if you don't feel comfortable dropping your questions there and would like to direct message me while I'm running the session, that as well. Don't forget, there's some other giveaways and prizes throughout this conference, which I'll talk about towards the end. Karen, I'm going to bring you into this conversation because you've not only worked on a variety of solutions, you've worked in a variety of cases with a variety of companies deploying multiple solutions. When it comes to this challenge statement, what do you think the presenters should have as their priorities? Karen?
I think the presenters, it's a really great question. Presenters really need to think about, move away from the sales pitch, move away from the pressure to just buy the tool and actually show their potential customers, as well as cybersecurity practitioners, just what the tool can do and what kind of risk it can manage. You know, we're really good at coming up with, hey, this is a problem and this tool is going to fix the solution. But we really need to understand it more in the broader business sense. We need to link it back to what the business problem is. You're not going to get buy-in to put in any solution without understanding how the security meets and enables the business. So it has to be business solution oriented, from my perspective.
You know, if ever there was an opportunity to canvas the statement people, process, and technology, this was that opportunity. Karen, as always, very creatively thought through, but very much to the point. Brevity is wit, as they say. Karen, as always, thank you so very much for that. Helen, I'm going to bring you also into this conversation because, again, you live in this world on a daily basis where you are addressing different challenges. In your own experience, what are some best practices that you can shower upon our presenters across the next 5 days when it comes to addressing their challenge statement? Helen?
It really depends on the challenge you're solving. Yeah, so a famous answer, it depends. But for example, from cloud application security perspective, we want to identify weaknesses on the systems before components have been provisioned to production. Cloud systems are complex, often hybrid, legacy code, open source, code integrity risks. I'm referring to supply chain vulnerabilities, right? We heard those before. It's difficult to prioritize where to focus. And especially if the resources are limited, you must make clever choices in order to, in terms of prioritization. If you think about it, there is a rare case when one low-risk vulnerability will lead to an exposure. However, multiple low-risk vulnerabilities in combination can lead to a successful attack. So performing things like activities like threat modeling would be a best practice, also called a whiteboard hacking, right? It's important to it's important step that has to be done early in development lifecycle, or as soon as possible if you have never done, to identify flaws in architecture and application logic. So then prioritize your risks, high risks findings, right? Often those are front-facing flaws, and work down to build your defense in depth. So we're really talking about defense in depth. And this week you will see challenges at different layers of the architecture of organization, of the cloud systems, and so on. So really look at your defense in depth and prioritize based on that.
Fantastic, Helen. And as always, I think one of the things that you're really stressing upon here is forewarned is forearmed. If you're going in there to present on a challenge, bring data to the table, bring information to the table, cite examples. It wouldn't be a complete session if I didn't throw in my 2 rupees of thought into this question. So I'll ask myself the same question in my head. Yes, I do talk to myself. I understand Maddie from CyberX says that's a sign of madness, but that's fine. That's the method to my madness. The one thing that I will say to all the partners and vendors that are speaking at this conference, and I say this to my students quite a lot, is that listen to understand as opposed to apply. And as the client at the table looking for a solution, I want you to understand where I'm coming from. In many cases, I am not at the level of technical acumen that you are at. Break it down for my team. Help us understand that solution collectively. Speaking of communication, one of the things about this conference which has really appealed to me is that it's starting to move away from the sales pitch, looking less at vendors and looking more at the solutions provider community as partners. I'm going to start off with Karen, we'll then go to Daniel and then close with Karen. How does a conference like this help facilitate better dialogue with the partner and the solution provider community? Karen?
I think I'm going to build on what I said before. Having been in a position where I get cold calls and pressure sales techniques, at least that's how I felt when I was looking for ideas and solutions. This gives everyone an opportunity to sit back and go, does this really look at what my problem is? It doesn't matter what the day is, which pillar, whether it's critical infrastructure or public sector, all of these partners are bringing solutions that go broader than what their individual pillar is. So, for example, when we talk about the hybrid solution that people are moving towards in terms of the workforce, so people working both at home and going into the office, which means expanding the threat footprint for an organization, that's similar for everyone today. We're all making these decisions. You see all organizations going, what's coming forward? So, what we want to see is how do these solutions apply to all of you? Have the partners hit the mark in terms of the specific challenge, but can it go broader beyond that? Can we see solutions to some of our other cybersecurity problems and challenges that we face?
Very well said. And as I said, Karen, you always bring out a bit of creativity in me. And I'll say this, to everybody presenting, that this is not an opportunity to tell and sell. This is an empower, or rather, this is an hour that you have to empower with new solutions and new ideas. Let's look at this as an opportunity to talk, empower, and educate. Well said, Karen, as always. And thank you again for also structuring topics in a way that help facilitate dialogue. I want to work with this word dialogue just a bit. Bring Chair Pinsky back into this. Chair Pinsky, Captain, my captain. In your opinion, how can a conference like this help facilitate more dialogue? And if I can add to that, I actually had a message come in saying, can this help make more connections between the partner community and those consuming these solutions? Can it help make more friendships? Daniel, your perspective.
I absolutely think it can. And, many times during prep for the conference, I said that I really consider this type of conference, certainly the format, to be not evolutionary, but revolutionary. And I'll build on something, Ali, that you said. One of my favorite quotes from Stephen Covey is seek first to understand and then to be understood. I find very often in typical conferences, it's actually the reverse. Like I said before, where the focus tends to be on the solutions, on the vendors and the providers. But in this case, we're really seeking first to understand organizations and people and really going where they are instead of them coming to us. And I think by better understanding where they are, the challenges and problems that they're facing, we can then better marry those challenges and those problems with the correct solution to fix those problems.
Absolutely. And I think, not only am I happy that someone's actually listening to what I've said, so you did work with what I said, but I think this aspect about how do you bring solutions to different problems really stems from how do we understand those problems and how do we unpack that. With that, I'm going to ask Helen to just chime in a little bit more about how does she feel that this environment and this challenge statement edition will help facilitate more dialogue. Helen, over to you.
So looking at the problem, analyzing its root cause and identifying how the problem can be solved is always an engaging conversation. This is when we talk about the dialogue, right? As an architect myself, I want to see how, in detail. So when I'm listening or being a part of engaging conversation, I'm analyzing the feasibility of the proposed solution based on every word that's said. No pressure. Any other conversation or sales pitch about how some product would lose me after like 30 seconds, maybe even sooner, right? So like Daniel said, this approach is revolutionary. And like Karen was talking about the cold sales calls, this approach is engaging conversation between the vendors and community users.
Absolutely. And if Maddie's listening, which I know he is because they are taking notes, and I did forget to mention this, that at the end of each day, a nice little infographic will be going out about notes from each session. The one note I can tell the team from siberX from this session is that quote from Chair Pinsky. This is not evolutionary, but revolutionary. Should go on a t-shirt in the vault. We have another 8 to 9 minutes left, and I want to run through the last set of questions that we have and then come to a quick soft landing as we move to the opening talk show. To the chairs and co-chairs, what as an audience should they be paying attention to during this session? How can they get maximum benefit from siberXchange, the challenge statement edition? We'll begin with Chair Pinsky.
Well, I think our audience has a fantastic opportunity. I think most of them are going to be able to relate to some of the challenges that we're discussing over the next 5 days, either directly or indirectly. So I think a goal should probably be is what are those nuggets? What are those things? What are those maybe the mindset of how to go about solving a challenge, or maybe the tool set? Did you maybe see a tool that then you can bring that information back to your organization and maybe solve a challenge that you're currently facing right now?
Absolutely. And I think the key over here is going to be not just whether you can actually bring something to your organization. It's also about who else can you bring to the table. And when it comes to who's at the table, it's about giving them voice at the table and having those conversations and engagements. And I think this conference allows for a very neat starting point if you're looking for a couple of solutions to a challenge where you haven't yet been able to think through it in its entirety. Helen, I'll come to you now and then we'll go to Karen. As an audience member, what do you recommend as a couple of best practices to benefit the most from this conference? Helen?
So from my opinion, regardless of your personal goal joining this event, and we have many people with different backgrounds joining, I think you will find something interesting and something that you can learn about. So I hope this conference will spark your curiosity. I talk a lot about curiosity, right? And will inspire you to do some further research on this topic of your interest. So look for those moments, look for something that inspires you, that raises a question in your head, and follow that and ask that question. We're looking forward to your questions.
Absolutely. And I think something that one of my professors told me, which stays to me to heart till today, is read for what's not written and listen to what's not being said. Those are the questions that you can bring to the table and facilitate more discussion. I'll also add another rupee of mine to the table and say, if you've got questions, you've got ideas. One of the beauty of the siberXchange community is that with the quality of their streaming, the quality of their production, they're open to doing more engagements, more sessions. Here's your opportunity to also reach from one point to reach the world. So build community around you. Lastly, Karen, you've been nothing less of a community builder, a community organizer in many cases. What are some tips that you can give to our audience as they prepare for 5 days of challenge statements?
Well, there's not a lot more that I can add to what my co-chairs have said. However, I will say that we have advisors who work in the field or have done research into the field who will be also taking part in the challenges from the perspective of asking questions and communicating and creating a dialogue that's more than just the tool. They might have some of the questions you have, maybe give them some questions that they might not have thought of to add to the sessions. They're there for you to consume, to learn, and to find perhaps answers you didn't know you were looking for. Just take time to sit back without the pressure and enjoy seeing others on the hot seat while they try and prove to and show us all that these are really true solutions, cybersecurity solutions that can fit organization security problems.
Absolutely. Questions are the key that unlocks the door to knowledge. So bring your questions to the table, bring your ideas to the table, and we look forward to engaging with you across all 5 days and the multiple challenge statement editions. By the way, just as a reminder, you can all earn up to 24 CPE credits. But last but not the least, before we come to a conclusion and a soft landing, I want to ask each advisor about which particular day of the 5 days are they particularly forward to. Karen, we'll start off with you.
I'm looking forward to all of them, having worked at them, but I went looking and I've got a couple that are really relevant to some clients I'm working with today, but I think that are really forward thinking. And that's the ones that I'm looking for, are the ones that are looking future forward from a security perspective. So threat hunting across borders. Looks like a really interesting one. I love the AI stuff. There's a lot going on in that field, and I think we need to learn and understand a lot more. But then the one that caught me was also cloud inequity. There's so much to see this week. As I said, it doesn't necessarily need to be your pillar. It needs to be a topic that is near and dear to your security.
Absolutely. And cloud inequity, because I'm the moderator on that one. So make sure you all join that session. All right, Daniel, well, actually, you know what? We'll go to Helen and then we'll have the chair give his closing remarks. Helen, what particular day or days are you looking forward to?
Just like Karen said, I'm interested in all of these topics because I'm curious to know how those challenges are solved. However, I'm looking particularly to day 5, and not because it's a day before the weekend, but because I think education sector is often overlooked. Naturally, people's attention falls into the next new thing, but education sector is nowhere new. It's been there for decades. It works, right? So, and we forget that all this legacy that it was built on, right, with the lack of cybersecurity expertise, it makes them very vulnerable in today's world. So I'm looking to day 5 to learn more about fixing existing problems in such as fundamental sector as education.
Absolutely. And I think myself being part of the education and academic world, I think the bridges that are forming between the education and academic sector and the private sector also create for very interesting cybersecurity opportunities and innovations. So I too am really looking forward to that day as well. And lastly, Chair Pinsky, it's up to you. Provide the mic drop moment and tell us which day or days are you particularly looking forward to?
Well, like my co-chair said, I'm interested in all 5 days. But the one day which really piques my interest has to be day 3, critical infrastructure. It's the only sector I've not worked in, so there's something novel there for me personally. And also, if you think about the last 6 to 8 months, with all the hacks that we've been seeing and the headlines we've been reading around Colonial Pipeline, the Florida city's water supply, it just seems like the world is really woken up and are acknowledging that critical infrastructure is critical, it's very vulnerable, and that the potential consequences on all of our lives, it's grave. So for all of those items in combination, I would say day 3, critical infrastructure.
Fantastic. And I do agree with you that from a critical infrastructure perspective, because so much of our citizen data relies on it, citizen services rely on it, there's definitely a lot that our audience might be alerted to that can provide not just for knowledge from a cybersecurity perspective, but from a day-to-day engagement. Well, now, chairs, we did have a debrief before this session about some of the answers that we were going to give. You left the most exciting answer for me. I was hoping one of you would use it, but I'm going to use it. So when the audience asks me which day I'm looking forward to, I'm looking at Maddie and the team at CyberX, and I'm saying Saturday, July 17th, when the 5 days are done and we can celebrate and pop open a Barbican. For those of you who don't drink alcohol, you would know the Barbican reference. And chill out and relax and reflect on an exciting conference that has just concluded and plan for future conferences such as CISO Forum Canada and many, many more. With that, not only do I thank our audience for participating, I thank our chairs for not just providing us with their perspective, but for taking the time. And so I began this session with a reference to our indigenous land that we are in, the indigenous cultures that we operate in. I'll close with a statement from an indigenous elder, which was, if you want to learn your language, you have to be able to. I thank the Indigenous people of Canada for giving us the opportunity to use our languages in cybersecurity, train in our languages in cybersecurity, and build a safer and secure Canada for all of us. I'll see you at 10 a.m. EST with the opening talk show for Day 1, CyberXchange 3.0, Financial Services. Welcome again to the Challenge Statement Edition, and I'll see you, if my math is correct, in approximately 26 minutes. Take care, stay safe, and see you.